Let's do this. The Cult of Hockey podcast by the faithful and for the faithful. I'm David here today with Bruce McCurdy. Hey, Bruce.
Hey, David, how are you doing tonight?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Beautiful day
Yeah, every
in
day,
Edmonton
every day.
today. Yeah, and I understand you were in Radium this weekend.
I was, yeah. I got in on Friday night, left Sunday, and drove all the way up what we called it the Nuge Highway, Highway 93. Comes up from BC, from Radium all the way to, joins up with the one for a while, and then it splits off again. It's the 93 in Alberta. That is the Icefields Parkway, and we took it all the way up to Jasper. And kind of the long way home, but my oh my, all the Radium to Jasper the whole way was just gorgeous.
Isn't it? Did you go to the hot springs?
Nope, didn't have time for that. We were down there for our 45th annual hockey pool, National Eternal Hockey Draft. We've been doing it since '79 when the Oilers got into the league. First ever pick in our league was Wayne Gretzky, 1979,
Uh-huh.
and I'm now the defending champion. So
Well,
I'm having a
congratulations. But Bruce, you didn't go to the Radium Hot
little
Springs when you're
celebration.
you didn't go to the Radium Hot Springs when you're in Radium?
Well, no, I didn't.
All right, you're not a hot springs guy?
Not particularly. We probably should have tried it, I guess,
Oh
but
yeah. I love hot
our
springs, so
our days were pretty full, and I walked in Radium 3 days, three
sure.
different places. That was pretty nice. We have sort of social stuff going on.
I often went
So
there as a kid to Red Streak Campground.
yes, I walked in Red Streak yesterday morning. It was beautiful.
Yeah. All right, so the Oilers have their final roster, maybe. Still not been formally announced, I guess, on Cap Friendly.
Hmm.
But looks like the roster's in place, Bruce. And there's absolutely zero surprises on the roster. If you had
None.
said at the start of training camp who will be on the roster, you would have named all these players, with the possible exception of one. You might have included Raphael Lavoie, and he's not on the roster. He was waived yesterday, and today on Monday he passed through waivers successfully for the Oilers' point of view,
Hmm.
and he can now be reassigned to Bakersfield.
Hmm.
He's also got a 30-day window, as I understand it, where he can be recalled to Edmonton without going through waivers, and gives the Oilers some flexibility in case they do want to bring him back. But I understand, Bruce, there's an article in The Athletic today that
Hmm.
says
Yeah.
that Lavoie wasn't going to make the team. Like, just one final thing here.
No.
Mark Niemelainen got hurt during
Hmm.
training camp, and this was a complicating factor. And you can't send a player down who's injured. And it looked like this was the reason that Lavoie, Lavoie was waived, is that they had to keep Niemelainen around. But apparently he wasn't going to stay in any case. So tell me about that.
Yeah, well, this is according to Daniel Nugent Bowman of the Athletic, and he says an injury to Marcus Niemelainen put a wrinkle in Oilers' plans to set their roster. It's caused them to carry 11 forwards and 8 D-men as part of their 21-man group rather than expected 12 and 7. And he says what Niemelainen's status didn't do is influence their decision to put Raphael Lavoie on waivers. GM Ken Holland told The Athletic that the 23-year-old winger would have only made the Oilers if they were able to have 13 or 14 forwards on the roster. To Holland, it comes down to where Lavoie is in his career in concert with where the Oilers are in their evolution. He's coming, he's improving. By making Rafi available, we took the risk that he was going to be claimed. But with a 19 skater roster, it doesn't give us the luxury to carry a young player that we can grow. We need everybody, all hands on deck. We're trying to field the best team we can. And then, much to Holland's relief, Lavoie cleared waivers on Monday along with Ben Gleason and center Len Peterson. So he just wants him to keep developing down in Bakersfield and keep doing what he was doing the second half of last year and do it even better. And and as Daniel says, it's going to take an injury or two, probably of the LTIR variety, to clear cap space. or some subpar play from a depth forward for him to get a chance. And of course, this is what happened last year with Klim Kostin. You know, he started the year in the minors and he had to wait for an injury. And when Kane got hurt, that's when he finally got his chance. And Lavoie is at a similar stage in the process, having cleared waivers. Now the team has control of the guy. And to clarify slightly what you said before, they can call him up at any time in the future. And from that day, they have 30 days where they can use him for a while and then still send him out and not have to waive him again.
Oh, I see. Thanks for that, Bruce.
Or if he plays 10 games, as soon as he plays 10 games or he's on the roster for 30 days, then he's considered a full-time NHLer again, or that has to clear waivers.
Wow.
So now
this is
all of a sudden they got
huge.
a ton of flexibility today by passing through this shell game, which it's odd how this league plays it, but they play it that way consistently. Guys don't get claimed very often. And by getting all three guys through, Holland has that kind of flexibility now on, Raphael Lavoie, a power winger, on Lane Peterson, a right shot center, and on Ben Gleason, a tweener, sort of number 8 defenseman. Any of those three guys, I mean, they're all in Bakersfield now, going to be playing down there. And any such times he needs a player, I mean, they would probably be 1, 2, and 3 on the call-up list, depending on the need by position. And based on what Holland says here, Lavoie is probably number 3. He does think Lavoie will be second pick he ever made as the team's GM, by the way. So it's not something he's doing lightly, right?
Yeah.
To be cutting and exposing a guy that he invested a pretty high draft pick. But he does think he'll be an NHL regular. He says if you look at all these young guys, you mentioned Evan Bouchard, Dylan Holloway, and Philip Broberg, they didn't just all of a sudden show up and play 80 games. I don't envision Rafi could do that. When we're only carrying 12 forwards, we've got to carry forwards that are going to be in the lineup every night. They can't go through growing pains. So that's Holland's position, is he wants veterans. Simply
the real tell, Bruce, was with when Brandon Sutter was in town. He was basically being handed a job, it seemed like, by the pundits closest to the team. And it seemed like to me, to the team, like it seemed like the coaches really wanted Brandon Sutter to make the team and be that veteran. And it just struck me their great preference for veteran players came through in that moment, because Brandon Sutter was nowhere close to being up to NHL speed. I think, just as an observer watching the games, I didn't see it ever. I mean, I saw a player who was smart and could dump the puck in, but I didn't see a player who could win pucks or defend at NHL speed. But it just seemed like there was this momentum building for.
There was a
Brandon
narrative out there.
Sutter.
I didn't believe a lot of that narrative. A lot of it is people that are rooting for Rafi Lavoie. Look at the Oilers bringing in this old guy to take his job away, and completely different jobs for starters.
Some real insiders were saying Sutter had the inside track, like Spector was saying it, Kurt Levins was saying it. People who sometimes know what's going on. So
I get that.
And I think
in a perfect world, if he'd come back healthy, he might have had that shot, but he didn't, and he knew it. And he, to his credit, he recognized it, and he walked out with his head held high and said, "I gave it my shot, and I'm not going to be able to do it." So now you mentioned Adam Erne.
What they want a veteran, and I'm going to say they're going to sign Adam Erne. I think he's going to be their 12th forward, because that's what they want. They want a veteran player. Brad Malone, the other guy who was in the running for a second. I mean, he's not even close to being up to NHL speed, if you ask me.
No,
like, I don't,
he's slow.
I don't get it at all. But Adam Erne hasn't been great, but he has been. I mean, he's been as outside of the goal scoring, he's been as good as Raphael Lavoie. Like, Raphael Lavoie has a good shot. Adam Erne is a better player, though, in every other aspect of the game right now, as far as I can see. I mean, I'm not saying that Adam Erne or Lavoie are. I wasn't impressed by either, honestly, during the training camp. And if they had lost Lavoie on waivers, I know a lot of people would have lost their freaking minds. I would have been a little bit more calm about it, because I mean, it was interesting. Like, the people who watch Bakersfield closely, I didn't last year, but there was a number of people that do, and they were divided on him. I mean, there's Ira Cooper, who watches it closely. He was quite a Lavoie fan, as I was telling from his posts. But he was quite realistic about Lavoie being able to pass through waivers. I ever thought it was going to happen. I think there's Bruce
Mhm.
Kurlock,
Yeah.
who writes for Oilers Nation, and I think he was quite a fan of Lavoie, if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken.
Yeah.
But a guy, there's what is Rich's last name? He's on Twitter. The guy lives in Bakersfield.
Yeah. Yeah. Goes to the game. He's
Is
at
it Rich?
Eastern
I
Refugee,
was
but
going to say
I can't
Rich
remember his
Preston,
last name.
but I don't know if he has
No,
his
that
last
was a
name
player.
listed. That was a hockey player. Anyway, Rich goes to all the games, and he was not that sold on Lavoie as a player. He was saying, Lavoie had up and down moments and was inconsistent. And there's lots of players as good as Raphael Lavoie in the AHL.
Mm.
My own viewing of Raphael Lavoie is um, he needs to hit more. He needs to
Yeah.
play a more physical game. This is my
Mhm.
constant refrain with AHL hockey players. You are so close to $10 million NHL career, $20 million NHL career. Hit somebody. Like get out there and hit some, like play a physical game, Raphael Lavoie, and you will make the NHL. He's not just on skill, which is what he seemed to be going with. I mean, I think I've seen him play aggressively, and I don't understand, Bruce, why when he gets the chance in preseason, he just doesn't go for it and run through players, go right through them to make the NHL, because he might have made it then if he had done that.
Mhm.
But I didn't even see one big hit. I saw him puck protect a few
Yeah.
times,
I was going to say.
but maybe that's not his game hitting. I mean, but again, I would say make it your game. Make it your
Mhm.
game, and you might make $10 million.
Right. But yeah, there's different ways of using physicality and puck protecting, bouncing guys that come in to hit you and wind up hitting the ice like he did to that big Logan Stanley in Winnipeg. I like that hit plenty, and that was a reverse hit. Stanley went from hitter to hitty in about an eighth of a second, and on his butt on the ice, and he showed his power on plays like that. And some of the big guys are more puck protectors than they are.
Like
Uh,
Penner, Dustin
yeah, like
Penner,
big
prime
Dustin
example.
Penner's a perfect example. Mike Krushelnyski was such a player. You could argue Leon Draisaitl such a player. He can hit, but his real strength is to
He can
protect
hit.
the puck and reverse hit guys, and to make them pay the price when they come at him. I guess is the way to put it, as opposed to running around looking to cream guys. He'll do it on occasion, but and often you'll find that some of the goal scorers and the big strong guys, that's what they do. It's just they're really good at protecting their own space. So, and I'm not saying that Lavoie shouldn't be looking to do more. And some of the feedback I kept seeing about him was, even though he had like 15 shots in the preseason, and he had some pretty nice numbers against different levels of competition. Obviously, he uh, didn't do enough to be visible, and some of that was just simply being clear of the track kind of moments where you have to, just not be denied by, power.
Yeah.
And he did make some good plays to power the puck to the net. You can see the skill, and you can see there might be a player there, but apparently, as far as Ken Holland's concerned, it's not yet, because he's going to have a roster of 12-7, and he wants 7 NHL defenders and 12 NHL forwards, and then let the injury guards, or let Jay Woodcroft decide on a given night, is it 11-7 or 12-6? You can go either way, which kind of brings us back to Nima Linen having to be put on the roster, because he did this year, in the second year of his 2-year contract, he became a one-way NHL only contract. And
Hmm.
that immediately bit the Oilers on the ass, because he's on a 1-year contract, he can't be uh, he can't be put on waivers, nor can he be assumed to not be on the team. Whereas a two-way guy, if he gets hurt in camp, well, he doesn't show up as a problem on the roster. And Niemelainen, they could put him on long-term injured reserve and sort of keep the spot open, but immediately that puts him right back in the cap jail they've been dealing with for the last 3 years with Clefbaum's injury, and that's the very last thing they want. So I thought, we've got to put a place for him on the roster. We got a 21-man roster. We got 20 guys that have been fixed for a month. And 21st spot, it was going to be maybe Lavoie, maybe it was going to be Peterson, maybe it was going to be Ernie. Guess what? It's going to be Marcus Niemelainen. To open the season, we're going to have to go 11-8-2. And once we do open the season, once we get to day 2, we can make moves. And I would personally expect to see Niemelainen go on long-term injured reserve on day 2, and then a replacement brought in, either Adam Ernie signed, as you say, which is very possible, or possibly Lane Peterson brought back up as the 12th forward.
What's your bet, Bruce? I'm going with Erne. What's your bet?
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning that way too. These other guys have cleared, and he's still around. They just can't sign him yet. But I think even as early as tomorrow, this is Thanksgiving Monday, the 9th that we're talking, and the rosters are being declared today. Oilers, we're still waiting, but we know who the 21 guys are. And then, so they have to crystallize that opening roster, and there's certain things they have to do. They had to get Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway on the roster, just like last year. They had to squeeze those guys into their tight roster because they're on entry-level contracts with big bonuses. And either you get them on the roster at the beginning of the season, or if you call them up later in the season, you get their bonuses is an issue. So they have they wanted to get those guys on the team, and again, that's my understanding. I'm just going to double check something on that.
Adam Erne, 61 games last year, 18 points, 8 goals, 10 assists, minus 12.
Yeah.
Year before, 79 games, 19 points, minus 22. He was on
With
a terrible
Detroit
Red Wings team, so the plus minus is a team stat. It's earned by multiple players, not just by Erne. And you only put so much weight in that. I mean, he could have been doing his job essentially and still get dragged down by a number of ineffective defensemen and other players on the ice.
Okay. So I need to correct myself. Sorry.
Go ahead.
A friend of the blog, Ira Cooper, original Posar, sent me a note on this earlier today, and I'm still getting it wrong. So, me a call.
There we go. Okay.
He says, Bruce, with respect, your take on performance bonuses not right. It's only an issue for teams going in LTIR, which the Oilers are not. This business of Broberg's or Holloway's, I misstated. Fact is, neither of those guys was going to go down really under any circumstances. And I guess they just decided, well, these guys, we need tweeners, and the only way to get tweeners is to waive them, get them vetted in the minor leagues, and roll the dice. And now that the dice has rolled, boxcars, it's happy times for Holland. He's got all the flexibility that he could hope for today. In the meantime, his 21-man roster remains exactly the same 20 guys that I posted in a roster I'm looking at dated September 13th.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's 4 weeks ago. And it's the exact same 20 guys. And the 21st guy is Marcus Niemelainen for now. And by this time tomorrow, it'll probably be someone else.
Yeah.
And then by the time they actually play a game on Wednesday, they'll have 20 guys available to play for him, if not 21.
All right. So, Philip Broberg's on the team. I guess Ekholm and Kulak were back at practice and skating hard. Ryan McLeod was there skating hard. So as the season comes around, the Oilers are getting into better shape in terms of injury. I'm curious to see the Matthias Ekholm, Philip Broberg partnership that's been talked about. I think that could be really pretty exciting. Actually, they're two big, very mobile. Broberg more mobile, but Ekholm more steady. Obviously, the veteran player. I think that might be an interesting partnership. CC and Kulak as a third pairing is a very strong third pairing in the NHL. And it's a lot of money tied up in that spot. And it might open up a trade as the season goes along for one of CC or Kulak being moved out. But we'll see how that goes. And then there's Bouchard and Nurse, who have had their ups and downs in preseason as they've been coasting somewhat now and then. But, they're both really high skill players who are outstanding hockey players. So, I'm excited about this this regular season, Bruce. I mean, Connor Brown has looked fantastic to me.
Hmm.
Jack Campbell has looked as better than he ever looked last year in the preseason. So we're entering the season on a real high note, and we'll see how it goes from here.
Yeah, well, that's for sure. I'm looking forward to this business of not being in cap jail for the first time in several years.
Yeah.
Like really, all the time that Holland's been here, because Clefbaum uh, was done at the end of his first season and never came back, and that there was just no way out of that, no realistic way out of that. And even in the first year when COVID hit in March and it messed everything up, and of course the cap itself hasn't moved, so what we haven't seen, we've seen machinations to magically stay below the cap figure every single day for the entire season, which is the cap jail I referred to. Now we get to see how the other half live, of what you can do with your cap space when you don't have this restriction. You can actually accumulate cap space over the season. And my understanding is, not having followed it closely, a team that can do this for the last few years. I'm keen to see what kind of stunts they pull in terms of putting guys on and off the roster when there's a break in the action, try and save a little bit of cap space
Yeah.
in that fashion.
Yeah.
So, and in the meantime, uh, during the 30 days, I think that the guys uh, been called up from the minors who's cleared waivers, I think you can sort of move that guy on and off the roster at will. So I'm keen to learn more. I mean, it's going to be a new experience, and Ken Holland, for all his critics, he's an old hand at some of this stuff, and I frankly thought he did a pretty masterful job of keeping the team within the cap in the last couple of years, and moving out cap that wasn't providing value and replacing it with either cap that did provide value or even retained salary guys that over provided. So he pulled off some pretty sly moves in there. Not that he gets a lot of credit for it generally, but this will be a new test of how do you make that cap space work for you, and how do you turn sort of $300,000 below the cap ceiling into more, so that when you get to the deadline, you can go out and get a real player. And we'll we'll see how he and his team handle that, or we won't see, because a lot of it will be done pretty slyly behind the scenes. These little moves here and there that aren't really headline grabbers, but they're cap space savers. So we'll see. We'll see what comes out. This is where having a lawyer like Ira Cooper in our corner is sometimes useful, because there's an awful lot of fine print in that damn CBA.
Bruce, it's always useful. And the difference between me and you is you sometimes go there trying to interpret what's going on, and I've just given up. Like
Yeah.
I just get it, I generally have an idea of it, but I don't try to. It's just so fraught and complicated, and even lawyers, I think have. I mean, Irish talked about he can sometimes read things and not be sure exactly what it means. I was just thinking of the Scott Bugstad move last year, where Holland found the cap space to bring in, or Nick Bugstad, excuse me,
Yep.
and he found the cap space to do that in a very kind of sly way. Moving Michael Kesselring to Arizona. I'm just looking at Cap Friendly right now. I see Kesselring didn't make the Arizona roster
Okay.
just now, so that's interesting. They signed a lot of veteran defensemen, though. They signed, Matt Dumba. They traded for Sean Dursey. I think they signed Troy Stetcher. They've got Travis Dermott and Juuso Valimaki. So they've got a lot of kind of veteran D-men that they brought in there. So close the door for him there. Bruce, the one thing I'm excited about, one of the things I'm excited about, I mentioned Ekholm Broberg. I'm really excited to see that.
Mm-hmm.
This third line that they've got of Ryan McLeod, Warren Fogle, and Dylan Holloway. Excuse me. This strikes me as a really good place for Dylan Holloway to start instead of on the top six as in last year. Little less pressure. He's been flying, absolutely flying in preseason. We know Ryan McLeod can skate the lights out, and Warren Fogel's pretty fast hockey
Oh,
player as well. All of them are big. All of them can be physical. Holloway and Fogel are more physical than McLeod.
hmm
Holloway seems to have a little bit of nastiness to his game, even I would say.
hmm
So this is the third line, which is exciting. It's full of guys who can make an impact on the game, not necessarily by scoring, but certainly by rushing the puck and making plays in it, attacking the net. So I'm excited about this one.
Well, they can get the puck moving north, and they can, get it spending some time in the other team's zone, and bang some bodies a bit and control the action. I thought Fogel and McLeod were really good at that during the latter portion of last season. That they developed some real chemistry between them, and it's pretty hard not to get excited about Dylan Holloway's future. I mean, you see so much, and you hear sort of knowledgeable insiders, talk about how strong his play is away from the puck. In terms of his positioning, his puck support, his defensive uh, positioning for it's sort of his natural game. I mean, he's still got to get the errors out of the game, but it's not like he's standing around in the wrong place. It's he's skating, he's moving, he's got a pretty solid fundamental. And he also has a track record, David, of having an okay rookie season and then a fantastic second year, as he did in
He
the
does.
AJHL, as he did in NC2A hockey, and arguably as he did in the AHL when he in his second year scored 7 goals in 12 games, I think it was. And it just sort of getting a second exposure to the same level of competition, and he just grows and improves. So there's lots of reason to be excited about that line. And
Of course, in those second years, he would have got more power. I'm guessing more power play time,
hmm
but he
that won't
won't
be
be getting
happening.
that. That won't be happening here. But listen, he could easily move up to the top six.
hmm
If there's any injury at all, obviously
hmm
he'd be a prime suspect for heading right up there, prime prospect, I guess, for moving right up into the top six. So, I mean, it's important. That wasn't the Broberg and Holloway picks were major picks for the Edmonton Oilers. They have yet to pan out.
Certainly not.
And if both of them do, though, this
hmm
year, and they both, to me, show every signal that they're going to. I mean, I
hmm
thought Philip Broberg just got better and better and better in the
Right.
preseason, and
Yes.
Holloway was the star of the preseason.
hmm
So if these two picks work out, and these players actually, demonstrate the class and the quality that I think they have, that I've seen in them, it could be huge for the Edmonton Oilers. I mean, just
Yep.
adds the kind of depth element that really good teams have.
Yeah. Well, Evan Bouchard was just a year ahead of Broberg, of course, and you'll notice that Holland mentioned all three of those guys, Bouchard, Broberg, and Holloway, as young guys, and said none of them sort of came in and just suddenly played 80 games, right? They kind of worked their way in over, part of one season, then the beginning part of the next season, and then, eventually they became full timers, and those are first round picks. So uh, you've got Ryan McLeod, who would also fit the same bill, and who was a high second rounder, and so I wouldn't say we're not at the point to be writing off Raphael Lavoie. It's just he's a little bit behind those guys in that he went all the way through his ELC and he's still on the outside looking in for now.
Yeah, and maybe he'll take a step forward in terms of his physical play, which I do think he needs to take in the AHL level and keep his scoring up. And I mean, Klim Kostin came out of nowhere. He
Mm-hmm.
was discarded by one organization essentially, and
Yep.
had okay success at the AHL level, and then he gets to Edmonton, and he just made up his mind. I think he was going to make an impact, and he did. I mean, I don't know what he's going to do in Detroit this year, but if he builds on what he did at Edmonton, he's going to be a hell of a player for the Red Wings.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see if he does that. He may not. That doesn't always pan out. But they're going to miss what he brought, that
Yes,
energy. And
they're trying.
Holloway might provide some of it. I guess is what I'm hoping.
Yeah, well, they
because
certainly need to replace some of that. And now, of course, Holloway himself was on the team for a big chunk of last year, but not at the end of it nor in the playoffs.
yeah,
But he did play over 50 games here. So the way it is right now, I mean, if you look at the 11 forwards on the team, only one of them's new to the team, Connor Brown,
I
that they
know.
picked up in the offseason. They replaced Kyler, well, they moved out Kyler Yamamoto and Clean Costin in the same trade. They lost Nick Bukestad. They just couldn't afford him on the open market, nor could they afford Clean Costin. But they were able to keep guys around. That they've got 10 returning forwards, and of them, really only Dylan Holloway is still a young and improving player. That we don't know how high he's going to go, but we know that he's probably going to be better this year than he was last year. And in the meantime, the other guys are pretty proven commodities. And the one switch there is, like, say, Brown in for Yamamoto at 1/4 of the cap hit for this immediately upcoming season. So they've managed to get sneak a high price player into the lineup at a league minimum salary by using a wrinkle in the salary cap rules.
Yeah, I think I did an earlier story during the summer about the core 12 players on the team.
Mm-hmm.
Top 7 forwards, which is the
Mm-hmm.
forwards on the top 2 lines, and usually your third line center,
Mm-hmm.
top 4D, and your top goalie. And it looks like the Oilers' core 12, other than Connor Brown, there could be some other changes, though. I mean, Ceci could move out of the core 12, for instance,
And Broberg could
and
move in.
Philip Broberg could move into it. But, that's probably unlikely. Stuart Skinner was in the core 12 last year, at the end of last year, and
Mm-hmm.
Jack Campbell could take over. But we could also see Stu Skinner assert himself again in a core 12 role. But this is one of the most stable Oilers teams that we've seen since the the 1980s glory era, when the core 12 usually saw 1 or 2 replacements each season, often internal, often guys who had been with the team and then worked their way up into the the core 12. Excuse me. So this is a very stable team. That's usually a good sign. And it sure is right now, Bruce. I mean, this is just a really talented team, and having I think a solid defensive system in terms of the zone that they're going to play more, and one more really solid defensive player in terms of Connor Brown. I'm glad about that.
Yeah, well, they got 20 guys. I mean, let's not count Niemelainen, who's on the roster for now, but that's probably a transitional thing. But of the 20 sort of healthy guys, or at least guys healthy enough to skate at practice today, 19 of them are returning Oilers. Right.
Wow. Yeah.
Connor Brown's, like, even in the Cup years, say they would change out 3 or 4 guys over the course of the summer just to keep them hungry, And so this team is they lost a couple of guys, but like mentioned, Dylan Holloway didn't finish the season with the team, but he's still a returning player, and all the other guys were here right into the playoffs and playing games. So it's I guess I kind of understand where Holland's coming from with don't want a young player in there. On the other hand, I'm not sure I agree with him in that. Why not have a young guy somewhere in the lineup?
Yeah.
Your 12th forward is not going to be the difference between winning and losing very often. Your top 11 are more than good enough to win a lot of games. And it's not like veterans don't ever make mistakes and only young guys do, because that definitely is not the case. I mean, when I saw the Seattle game the other night, I thought Lane Peterson had troubles defensively much more than Rafa Lavoie did.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, Holland won cups with very veteran teams in Detroit. This is what he believes in terms of a success, a formula for success. So it's worked with Detroit, having these, lots of guys in your 30s on the team. So I'm not against it. I want to see how this plays out. I mean, this has been framed as the Stanley Cup or bust season for the Edmonton Oilers. I don't buy that. I don't see the team busting. I see this as a pretty solid team. I mean, we just saw Mark Scheifele and Connor Hellebuck sign new 7-year deals in Winnipeg. So Canadian teams are able to retain top talent if you treat the players right, and I see the Oilers franchise treating their players right, and with a real window to win the Stanley Cup easily every year for the next 5 years with this group of players. So, I mean, when the Red Wings won with Babcock as the coach in 2007-08, I believe, Chris Chelios, 45, Dominic Hasek, 42, Dallas Drake, 38, Nicholas Lidstrom, 37, Chris Draper, 36, Darren McCarty, 35, Chris Osgood, 34, Kirk Maltby, 34, Thomas Holmstrom, 34,
Wow.
Aaron Downey, 33, Brian Rafalski, 33, Andres Lilia, 32, Mikhail Samuelson, 30, and then the two stars of that team, Pavel Datsuk, 29, and Henrik Zetterberg, 26.
So the two stars, I mean, that's equivalent. It's sort of equivalent in ages to McDavid and Draisaitl on the current team.
Correct.
Like if you look at the Oilers' top six right now, McDavid, Kane, and Brown, Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins, and Hyman. McDavid is the youngest guy there, and he's 26, turning 27 this year. And I think the oldest is Evander Kane. He's just turned 32, and the whole group is in that 27 to 32 sort of sweet spot of, near the height of their careers. And so they've they're certainly ready for go time. And so my guess is that a guy like Adam Ernie, who did play with the Lightning, come up with the Lightning system and have some success there, as a fourth line body banger, that he's got a shot at that spot. And he does have 355 more games of NHL experience than Rafa Lavoie has. And clearly, the organization values experience.
All right, Bruce, any final thoughts before we sign off tonight?
Well, they had the lines out in practice today, and they reported 3-3-3 and 2. Of course, they only had two men on the fourth line, Matthias Janmark and Derek Ryan, who would either have a forward like one of the centers come down and play with them, most likely, as they go through the game, the standard Jay Woodcroft style. Anyway, the lines are exactly as I posted on September 13th. And here we are a month later, and the lines even are correct. Not just who the 11 players are, who's playing with who. And that is stable. When, you talk about stable, they were stable last year. There was two battles in training camp last year. There was a battle between Ryan and Janmark because they could only afford one of them at the contract they had. And then there was a battle between Brad Malone and was it Greg McKegg for like the depth center position, because they could afford that guy. And even then they moved him out and brought Devon Shore back, and then they were good to go for a while. Like the team was like obvious weeks before camp broke as to who would be on the team, with one or two little exceptions. So there's certainly stability, maybe too much, maybe rigidity, but it's it's oil country being oil company. We're all happy to argue about the 12th forward just as vehemently as we might argue about who would be the number one defenseman or the starting goalie, because that's how we roll in oil country.
Yeah.
But honestly, who plays the 12th forward is not going to be the difference maker on most nights. Like, we got a pretty solid team that should be expected to win 50 plus games, in my opinion.
Yeah, on TSN, the Oilers had the number 1 and number 2 players in the NHL, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. And they're both centers, Bruce. I mean, how, remember all those years in the decade of darkness where we were just like, we need a number 1 center. We're desperate for a number 1 center. And now they've got the two best players in the NHL, both centers. And a veteran team, this Oilers team, the change in the Oilers team is in systems play. And it's fairly dramatic. I think this has been downplayed somewhat. I mean, I don't, the coaches, I don't think want to say, well, we totally screwed it up last year. overhauling our systems completely. That's not a message the coaches are stressing, but they really are fundamentally changing some major systems on this team in terms of both their neutral zone play and their defensive zone play. These aren't small changes, but I think having a veteran team allows you to bring in major systemic change like this and have players adapt to it fairly quickly. I would hope this is the case, that the players will all adapt very quickly, and that many of them already have played, for instance, the zone in the NHL. Not all of them have, but that the change is going to be fairly seamless. So we'll see how that goes. I think it's one of the interesting things we'll see in the next 10 days, how much they use the trap that they're bringing in the neutral zone, and if in fact they do mainly go with the zone, which is what I saw them do in preseason. I never saw them go man to man. In the games that I watched, they were playing a zone. So I mean, there's some people saying, well, they're going to use the zone a little bit of the time and blah, blah. No,
That's their fundamental.
that's their backbone is the zone. This is what they're doing, and they're going to see, maybe 20 games into it, if it's a disaster. It's not going to be a disaster, Bruce. What we've seen in the preseason, I believe, is chances, but not the chaos, not the cross seam chances that we saw previously, and including against Vegas in the playoffs. So I think it's working so far. It's not perfect. Right. No defensive system is, but I do see more stability, more calmness in their game than I've seen in the past.
Yep. Well, we saw a lot of low scoring games, David. I mean, the Oilers won games by 2-1, 3-1, 4-1, 2-1 again. There's at least two 2-1s and a 3-1 and a 4-1 that they won by. And of course, 3 of those were Jack Campbell's games. Oh, and there was another 3. Yeah, they gave in 1 goal in all 5 of the games that they won. 1 goal against. So it may not be the, the 5-4 thriller might turn into the 3-1 sleeper. But as long as you're the team with the 3 and not the 1, then your fans are going to be happier than not most nights. So
yeah,
that's they seem now to be sort of let's see if we can win games in a different way. And as preseason went along, that with all of the usual huge caveats about preseason hockey, but they were able to accomplish that objective of keeping games tight, finding a way to win them.
Indeed. So. All right. Let's leave it there, Bruce. Thanks for talking tonight.
All right. Thanks for listening, everyone.
And in the meantime, and in between times, this has been another edition of the Cult of Hockey podcast.